It's Patio Side Chats with Fernando Martinez from Chaparral Pavers with tips and advice on landscaping and gardening. Here's Fernando Martinez.
Yes, it is Patio Side Chats right here with Chaparral. We have another great show lined up for you today. Today's topic, we're going to talk about all things compost, soils, and how all the constitution of soils works with the plant material. How does it save water? And, how do we get these nutrients back in the soil? A lot of the soils are kind of dead with a lot of sand and silt, or if you have clay soils and there's not a whole lot of activity going on, there's ways to improve that soil and help the soil either retain more water or actually have better drainage as well. So I brought in an expert in the field and an absolute, probably the best person here on the Central Coast to talk to about compost, Mr. Bob Engel of Harvest Blend Compost. So welcome, Bob. Thanks for coming in.
Well, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. And so tell us about, I want you to tell us all about compost, what it is, what it does. But I know the product that you provide and that our listeners out there could purchase and enhance their yards with is called this Harvest Blend Compost. So what is that?
Well, Harvest Blend Compost is all natural organic material that's produced here on the Central Coast, and we take it and microorganisms break down that organic material. The organic materials, leaves, twigs, biosolids, manures, grape pumice. We get a lot of the skins from after they crush the grapes. They bring those in.
Wow.
And we add that in. We get straw from horse barns. We take all that material, and it's just basically a natural process where those microorganisms break it down into this natural soil amendment.
It's a true recycled product, really. You're taking things that are essentially waste, and we're turning them into compost, and then bring them into the soils.
That's correct.
Yeah.
The green carts that everybody has at their house that they put their yard trimmings in, all that comes in, and we grind it up and blend it up with the other stuff, and it's kind of amazing because the natural organisms, the bacteria and the microbes, they just take over, and they'll heat up to about 150 degrees, and by doing that, all the pathogens and all the diseases that are in from the weed seeds and all that get cooked. So then when we're all done with it, you have a pathogen weed-free product, and you can't really even tell where it came from. It just looks like a really rich soil.
Yeah, it's why you see the steam coming off in the morning. And I've always been intrigued by that because you can't see the microbes and you can't see them in there working, and they are the workhorses of compost. They're breaking that material down, right, and turning it into compost.
Definitely. There's millions of microbes in like a tablespoon of soil.
In a
tablespoon of compost.
Wow.
And it's just amazing that they're there. They're just microscopic, but it's really what creates what a lot of people call the soil food web. It's all these microbes and bacteria and fungi that work in the soil to put the nutrients into a plant, into the root system.
It makes a lot of sense. And essentially, now that we have our yards or landscape, like if you went out just up in the hills, compost is happening naturally. Leaves are falling from the trees, the litter, the birds are going by and doing their deal. But where we keep our yards so clean, raking up all the leaves, sucking up the lawn trimmings, and removing everything that would be breaking down naturally in our yards, we have to add the compost in, which much cleaner way of doing it and much better way, really.
Oh, definitely. I mean, first of all, California wasn't high in organic matter anyway. Our soils are kind of more of I guess they call Mediterranean kind of climate, more sandy, and so their normal soil might have only 0.5% to 5% organic matter, and it would be nice to be way above 5% with organic matter. And so compost kind of helps the soil, make that soil healthy. And like you say, we kind of do a good job of sterilizing it first.
Yeah, we get a lot of that stuff out of there, and there's no really not a whole lot breaking down and adding back. So we get reliant on chemical fertilizers and putting that down. But the the best organic fertilizer that you can get really is compost. It's the slow acting, long lasting, and is truly improving the constitution of the soil, where your chemical fertilizers, you put them out and there's nutrients in them, and then they get washed away and leached out, and actually can leave salts and things behind sometimes too. So, I remember you've been on the show before, and you were telling me about how you originally got into the whole compost world, and you told me a story about your dad. Tell me that again. How did you get started in this whole compost industry?
Well, we started, we were a construction company, and we were doing some soil bioremediation where we had soils in the, there was oil in the soil.
Yeah.
And we were trying to clean up hydrocarbons. And a lot of times back in 1986, our law came out about underground storage tanks. And a lot of them had been leaking that had held diesel fuel and gasoline. So we started taking some of those out. But the way to cure the pollution from it was through bioremediation, or basically taking the soil out of the hole and adding some bacteria in and composting the soil. Wow. And so that's kind of how we got into it in the first place. We started thinking, well, there might be more to this story of bioremediation and bacteria doing natural work.
Yeah. So basically those same microbes that are breaking things down, because it could help cleanse the soil. Am I thinking of that right? Or which is it?
Exactly. The microbes, what we do in composting and what we did back then is we just made the conditions right for the natural microbes in the soil to live. And so what would happen is in case of a diesel contaminated soil, you'd put some water, you'd put some nutrients like carbon into the soil. We would actually use a starter mushroom compost, which is kind of a spent compost, and we'd add that to the soil, and the natural microbes would take over, and the ones that liked the hydrocarbon contamination would thrive. Yeah. And after a period of anywhere from 90 to days would probably be the shortest, but 6 months to a year, the soil the hydrocarbons would be gone.
It'd fix itself in a sense. Interesting. Gosh, that's so cool, because all plants need nutrients to live. I mean, I think one of the biggest things that people I can be the best landscaper in the world and put in these gorgeous plants and brand new fresh sod and everything, and sprinklers and everything's working great, and we leave. But if it's not maintained and there's no fertilizer added in or no nutrients really there, they'll survive and live, but they won't thrive and bloom and be dark green and really what most people want. So when I go back years later and they're asking me, well, everything, it looks okay, but it's really not, vibrant and growing and living. It's because they need more nutrients than what they're getting. And so tell me about, like, if I were to add compost to existing planter beds at my house, or I wanted to renovate my lawn, what is that doing? Is that the same? Is it putting nitrogen and phosphorus and potassium back into the soil, or how is it feeding the plants?
It's feeding them. Compost has NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. It has all the nutrients in there. And one of the biggest practices is top dressing lawns. One of the more easier ways to add organic matter back into your soil is putting about 1/4 of an inch of compost over the top of an existing lawn. You want to you don't want to smother it, but you want the blade sticking through, and then you give it a little dose of water, and it helps break down all the matting that's underneath the grass.
Oh, it does.
And helps open up that soil.
I was thinking you had to kind of get that matting out of there first to let the compost kind of get down, but no, huh?
Ideally, if you have the time and the machinery, you can sometimes rent a dethatcher, and it's not going to hurt. It'll speed the process up.
I see.
So it doesn't hurt to, a lot of people hire a professional. You can have it dethatched, then you can aerate it, right, which punches holes in, and then when you add the compost falls in the holes. That's probably the Cadillac of top dressing.
There you go. I like that idea a lot. I've done lawn and renovation in the past. I've kind of gotten out of it now because we're kind of steered more towards hardscape, but I haven't. I've done it on my own lawn. I've run the dethatcher through. It's amazing how much thatch comes out of you end up with so much material. And
I did it years ago on a house, and 3 truckloads later of thatch. I was pretty worn
it's
out
a lot
going
of
to the
thatch.
landfill.
I know. So it made sense to me. I didn't go as far as the coring with, then you got the cores and you got to rake up the cores. So, but it's interesting to me that you wouldn't have to thatch it and that you could just put the compost right on top. But the compost will eventually work its way down into the soil, correct?
Those microbes will, the thatch that's down there is kind of a carbon, and then the grass has the nitrogen in it, and so if you're adding the compost there, you're just making a healthier environment for the soil. The microbes just do. It's amazing things what, the whole family of microbes and fungi and bacteria and all that. And it doesn't sound really good to talk about, but
sure,
it is part of nature.
Well, this is a gardening radio show, and whoever's listening is going to be into it and into that frame of mind, because that's what we do. We love being outside. We love being kind of in tune with the plants. I know when I see like my lilacs blooming, or, I go out there and I just love it, or my roses are doing better this year, or they have a great spring, and to be kind of in tune with what the plants need. And a big part of it is their food. I tell people, like, how would you feel with no food? You're not going to be growing and vibrant, and it's like they're just living off. If you don't fertilize out there at all and you're just watering, then something's not going to be either growing right or happy or as good as it can be. And when you start going down this, what do I fertilize with? Usually people a lot of times will pick chemical fertilizers, which is perfectly fine and can be used in conjunction with compost. Is that correct?
Oh, definitely. I mean, there's nothing, real wrong with chemical fertilizers. The compost can be done, and it's a slow release fertilizer. It's going to break down, and it's going to give you benefits of fertilizer for over the next 2-3 years.
Yeah, where the chemical fertilizers can be gone in weeks, sometimes days.
Right, and you have to be careful. Again, I think you mentioned earlier about runoff. With chemical fertilizers, you can either put too much on,
right,
or you can put just the right amount on and then overwater and you wash it off.
Right.
And one of the great things about compost is the water holding capacity. It not only it opens up your soil, so then your soil is going to hold a lot more water. So usually you can cut back a little bit on the watering.
So if you have sandy soils, the soils will actually retain more water with the compost mixed in there. But on the opposite side of that, with the clay soils, it breaks it up though too, doesn't it? It helps it drain better.
Yeah, definitely. It breaks the aggregate. How clay, you always get a clump of clay and you can't get there. And with adding compost into a clay soil and like rototilling it,
yes,
it'll break it up and it'll keep the clay apart because it's creating the aggregates better.
Yeah, it kind of gets in between all the clay particles. I know that when I've looked into soils and what makes clay soils not drain well is those little platelets are all kind of lining up and stacking on top of each other like plates. And if you can get compost in between those, they say gypsum and is another good thing to put in there and mix in with that. But with going back to the lawn thing, if you're going to renovate a lawn, of course you can top dress and put over. Now I tell people, if you do nothing and you plant a brand new sod lawn and you never renovate, 5 years, 7 years, the weeds are going to win. The grass is just going to be, kind of tired, and you kind of have to rip it all out and then put new sod in is really the only solution. And at that point, you can actually rototill in compost deep into the soil before you plant your sod. And then once you do that, and then you continue, like how often would you renovate a brand new lawn? Every year, every 2 years?
Well, like if you have bare soil, just and you're going to put a lawn in and a garden, or you just have a vegetable garden in the backyard that has some bare soil because it's you've torn everything out and you got it. That's when we recommend putting about 2 inches of compost down and rototilling that into the top 6 inches of soil. So if you can turn it with a shovel or turn it with a rototiller, whatever, to blend it in on that. So that top 6 inches of soil has a mixture of compost in it.
Yeah, so if you have open soil and you're starting a new project, that is the best time. You have a great opportunity to get a lot of compost into the soil and have a good constructed soil before you start planting. You're just going to be that much better off. It's going to be that much easier to keep water where it needs to be, to keep the drainage correct, to keep nutrients there in the root zone for the plant material. And once you're completed with that project, if you maintain it with compost, your lawn could last 10, 12, 15 years if you're actually renovating it and really keeping up on it. It's possible you could never have to replant your lawn. So
yeah, one of the things that we're seeing out there now is they're calling them rain gardens, or where they're putting out in the front yard a kind of a detention area where water that comes off the roof and off the sidewalks and driveways will go off onto a small detention area where you can hold a little bit of rain. If we get a half an inch of rain or 3/4 inch of rain, it's not all going to go down off into the street. It'll hold it onto your property. That helps the city flood control system,
right.
But it also holds that water and retains it in the soil.
And it gets washed down through the earth essentially and back into the water table. So it's one of the best ways to treat runoff for sure. And in a lot of cases, new construction and things are actually requiring it. You have to have a certain amount of permeable space. I've been hearing that word a lot lately on a lot of our job sites.
The new buzzword in the business is low impact development.
Yeah.
And really what it is creating a better environment to have the earth absorb the water. And we're finding some of them, they're blending compost and sand together, and they might, where that little detention is in the lawn, they might go down 3 feet with a sand and then come in and put some more dirt with compost blended on top of it.
Yeah, and then you can plant sod or whatever on top just to, help it. You got to have something to look at too there.
Right. Yeah.
So, go ahead.
Well, yeah, there's sod, and then you can choose plants, and you can use different mulches, and like you said, you can also do a hardscape and blend in some of the hardscapes with the new pavers and stuff and areas,
right.
but creating areas that will retain water a little bit. And then you can also make it so when they start to overflow, they're going to the right place, out to the street or wherever.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's a really good thing to think about and to be responsible, and still have our yards be, gorgeous and beautiful and really helping us so that we're not so labor intensive on the maintenance. So something that's going to last a really long time and totally be worth your effort and money, hard-earned money, is compost. I think is one of the best ways to keep that, be one of those, customers of mine that when they call me and I go out and see what's going on, the landscape's 2, 3, 5 years old. Things are still looking good. There's a lot of people I go, a buddy of ours that we know, Vince Rodriguez, oh my gosh, I go to his house. His place is gorgeous, and he lives in Orchid here. And I said, man, he really takes care because he's fertilizing and he's changing the watering and really has an understanding of, people say, oh, I don't have a green thumb, or, some of our clients say, I don't know how to work the clock, or, you really have to get in there and take ownership of your landscape, and don't expect the gardener is most likely going to do what's easiest for him. He may not do what's exactly best for your yard.
Especially if the gardener's the husband.
Yeah, right. And so I like to go out and back to these jobs years later and know that people are putting compost out, they're fertilizing, they're changing the water, they're doing the prunings, and really taking care of your investment, essentially. Because when you're thinking about doing this, landscaping, it's time, effort, and money, and we want it to be and as good as it can be and work as long and lasting as it can be as well.
Yeah, the deal with compost, if you make a little bit of effort at the beginning of the project to put the compost in the soil, you're going to reap the benefits of that, over the next 5 to 10 years, because it is basically going to open up the soil and help you at the 5-year mark and you're top dressing or adding a little bit of more fertilizer or whatever, it's all going to be that much more beneficial.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much, Bob, for coming in. I really, really appreciate your information, and we love having you in here, so we'll have to get you back again soon.
Hey, anytime.
Okay. We have been speaking with Bob Engel of Harvest Blend Compost. If you'd like to get some of his products, you can buy them at your local landscape supply yard. If you're trying to find a local dealer and where you can get the compost, it's at gotcompost.com. I am Fernando from Chaparral Pavers, and we'll be right back.
You're listening to Patio Side Chats with Fernando Martinez from Chaparral Pavers on California's Central Coast. Here on 1240 AM and 99.5 FM, KSMA.
This show is brought to you by Airval Block. Concrete paving stones or pavers are not all created equal. Airval Block pavers are created from a dry mix of gravel, sand, cement, and color. With very little water used, they're super strong. They won't crack or fade. And to be an Airval Block paver, the gravel and sand come from right here on the Central Coast, supporting our local community. Airval Block is the only local manufacturer of concrete masonry products like pavers, mortarless retaining wall blocks. Airval Block products are high quality for peace of mind, and there are many colors to choose from. And if you're not sure which products you need or how to use them, you will always get expert advice from the staff at Airval Block. Products made on the Central Coast for the Central Coast. Visit their fully landscaped outdoor showroom to see the many ways you can use Airval Block products at number 1 Suburban Road in San Luis Obispo, or go online at airvalblock.com.
If you're thinking about installing a new paver patio or paver driveway, check out Chaparral Pavers online at ilovetocomehome.com. Serving the Central Coast since 2001, Chaparral Pavers will work with you to get it right and complete the job to your specifications, as customer service is king at Chaparral Pavers. Paver driveways are stylish and durable and guaranteed to never crack. If your old concrete driveway or entryway is a hazardous cracking mess, it's time to call Chaparral Pavers. Go to their website, ilovetocomehome.com. You'll find all the information you need. Check out photographs of past installations and reviews from Central Coast residents who have used Chaparral Pavers. And don't forget, all installations are guaranteed for the life of your home. So check out Chaparral Pavers online at ilovetocomehome.com. Chaparral Pavers, they'll make you love to come home. Now, back to Patio Side Chats with Fernando Martinez from Chaparral Pavers on KSMA.
Yes, we're back and talking all things compost. We just had a great guest, Bob Engel, coming in and talking about compost. If you miss any part of the show and you want to hear the show in its entirety, you can catch us on YouTube. It's Chaparral Pavers. And, of course, you can go to the website, ilovetocomehome.com, and there'll be a link there. Also, you can see us on Facebook. And if you have a question and you want to get your question answered on the radio, so you can submit that on our Facebook page and check it out. So Chaparral Pavers, we'd love to hear from you. So again, very important to keep your plants and your lawn fertilized for savings of water and to have everything looking green, growing, vibrant, blooming. Compost is an absolute great way to do it, and it's so long lasting in the soil. I was amazed that Bob said it lasts years and years later. You can dig up the soil and analyze it, and the compost will still be there, and the microbes will still be working away. They're really our best friend. I mean, organic gardens, people ask me about planter boxes. He did mention about the vegetable planters. People say, hey, what's the best organic fertilizer? Compost is it. I mean, it's just amazing. It's easy, long-lasting. It's slow. There's no way to burn. It's just compost is a really great thing. So get out there and start composting your yard. And if you haven't already, or if you've done it and it's been a while, and thanks for tuning in. We will see you next week for another great show.
This has been Patio Side Chats with Fernando Martinez from Chaparral Pavers. Go to ilovetocomehome.com to find out more or call 805-588-6917. And be sure and tune in next week at this same time for Patio Side Chat here on KSMA.